I'm Chubba Chetta with Car and Driver, and I'm here with the Tesla Model S. It's the second product from Tesla Motors, a company founded in 2003 by a bunch of Silicon Valley brainiacs. Their idea at Tesla was to build a car company of the future, which in their mind meant electric-powered cars. Their first product was the Roadster. Hit the market in 2008. It was basically a very heavily modified Lotus Elise, a small two-seat mid-engine sports car. Had a giant battery pack, a powerful electric motor, and was very quick. But it was basically a toy for Hollywood environmentalists. The Model S, on the other hand, is a mainstream luxury sedan. It's big, it's got 4 doors, it's got plenty of seating inside. It's going to sell for less money, starting at under $50,000. So let's take a look at this car and see how it works. The mechanical layout of the Model S is very different than a conventional car. The 416 horsepower motor in this Model S is basically on the left side of the car, just behind the rear axle. So technically it's a rear engine car, and the battery itself is in a giant tray that's under the floor of the car. It's very heavy. It weighs over 1,300 pounds, so putting it low is a really good thing because it lowers the center of gravity of the Tesla. We measured the center of gravity height of a Model S, and it was just over 17 inches. That's about the same height as a Corvette and much lower than any other four-door sedan. Now that huge battery tray, it's filled with over 7,000 18650 cells. This is what an 18650 cell looks like. And it's the type of cell you see in a laptop. These are all stacked vertically in the Tesla's battery tray. There's also extensive cooling circuitry running through there to make sure that the battery doesn't get too hot or too cold. Using the 10 kilowatt charger, which requires a standard electric dryer circuit, this Model S charges in about 10 hours. With the optional 20 kilowatt charger, that comes down to 5 to 6 hours. On any car, the first thing you notice is the styling. And I think this Model S is absolutely beautiful. It's both sleek and muscular looking. You look at these front and rear fenders and the way they bulge out. We also have giant 21-inch wheels on this model. We have a continuous roof line all the way from the base of the windshield to the tail of the car. We've got a nice wedge shape as the car is leaning forward. All of this talks about speed and power, and sure enough, it has 416 horsepower, so it ought to look muscular. Now the sleek part is very practically driven. Even with this big battery, you don't want to be running the electric motor harder than necessary, so reducing the aerodynamic drag is very important. Tesla claims that this car has a drag coefficient of 0.24, which is about the lowest of any production car on the market. I really find that hard to believe. It's impossible to imagine how Tesla could do better than BMW or Mercedes in that regard. On the other hand, when you start thinking about the car, it is an electrically powered car. You look at the underbody of the Tesla and it's flat. That's where the battery is. No exhaust system to disturb the airflow, no drive shaft. The Model S front end looks conventional at a glance, but when you look at it more closely, you see this upper part. This is opaque plastic. It's not a grille like it would be in a normal car, and that's because it's an electric motor. It doesn't need a radiator. There are some heat exchangers down here for the air conditioner and the power electronics, but it doesn't need nearly as much airflow to cool the car as a regular one does. So they have a certain number of advantages with the electric design that helps them achieve that low drag coefficient. So let me pop the hood on this Tesla. There's no engine here. And that's because the electric motor is actually back by the rear axle. So what we have on the Tesla is another luggage compartment up here. It's not huge, it's about 5 cubic feet, but this is actually a perfect size and height to put grocery bags in and not have everything flopping over. It's one of the advantages of having the electric power plant. In back, the Model S has another trunk. It's a hatchback. This top-of-the-line version has the power-operated hatch lid, and this gives you another 26 cubic feet or so of luggage space. This area on its own is bigger than any of the competitors have, And if you fold down those two back seats, you have a total of over 60 cubic feet of carrying capacity. So this is a remarkably practical car for a sedan. This model is also equipped with the optional rearward-facing third row seat, which is basically for kids. They have to be a little over 3 feet tall to use it, and they got to weigh less than 77 pounds. So it's not going to work for everybody, but if you got kids between 5 and 10 years old, you can carry 2 more of them in this car. The interior of this Model S is very rich looking in sort of a minimalist Bauhaus way. You look at these door panels, it's hand-stitched leather, different colors top and bottom. That same theme continues through the dashboard. Nice color contrast, nice stitching, beautifully finished. This is really lovely wood. In truth, I don't know if it's real or fake, but it feels real. It's actually got texture to it, and it doesn't have that overly glossy finish like so many woods do. I have no trouble finding a really good driving position in this car. This whole steering column seems to look like it came straight from Mercedes-Benz. The stalks and the controls are pure Mercedes, but Tesla has put its own unique trim on the steering wheel. The seat is very comfortable, but it's not really a sporty seat. It doesn't have a huge amount of lateral support. It does have a few missing options though. A lot of the luxury cars in this segment have an adjustable thigh support. This car doesn't have that. In fact, it doesn't even seem to have a memory seat, which is an unusual omission in a car of this class. But still, I've been very comfortable driving this car for hours at a time. There's not a lot of storage bins inside this car. In this central console where most cars would have a nice opening, there's actually some electronics that powers something or other. There is this big bin down on the floor here, there's another piece in here, and Tesla has talked about maybe adding more bins somewhere in here. But as far as a closed bin like most cars have, you won't find it on the Model S. One thing that strikes you when you get inside the Model S is the complete absence of knobs and virtual complete absence of buttons on the dashboard. Other than the four-way flashers and the glove box button, there is nothing else. Everything is controlled either through the steering wheel, your voice, or the central console. It's actually a 17-inch display, and not only is it big, but it controls an awful lot of aspects of the car. For example, hit controls, and up comes a screen that lets me open and close the sunroof. There's no other switch for doing it. It's purely done on here. This is where I turn on my headlights if I want to turn them on manually instead of leaving them on auto as they naturally are. I can open the charge port, the trunk, the front trunk. All of that can be controlled here. I can also get into my driving mode, and I can change the regenerative braking to a lighter setting. I can change the steering effort between comfort, standard, and sport. That's right through here. We can also get into the nav screen, and you see it up here. It looks fairly conventional, except I can hit the corner and go absolutely full screen on it. This is just gigantic. So it's quite a nice nav system. Unfortunately, it's always with the map oriented with north facing up. I can't change the orientation to put the direction I'm driving facing up, which is too bad because with this large screen vertically oriented, that would be very useful because I could really see what's ahead of me. But one advantage of Tesla's computer screen controls is that the nav system's operation can be improved using software updates. Tesla has already told us that the missing memory seats will be added in this way. I can bring up an energy display which basically shows my energy usage for the past 30 miles. I can bring up my rear view camera. I can bring up a web browser actually. And right here we have the Tesla website with the biographies of the executives. But we can change that, and part of the reason we can do it is the car has 3G built in. And of course we've got the media screen that lets me pick from AM, FM, XM, TuneIn radio, and Slacker personal radio that are accessible through the internet. It can also pick up music from my smartphone. Across the top band we always see these options: the media, the nav, the energy, the web, the rear view camera. So you don't have to go into any sub-menu to pick from one to the other. And across the bottom, we always have the climate control screen. I can change my temperature, I can bring up the seat heaters, and this screen can do this because it's such a big screen. And one of the nice things is, because the screen is so big, these buttons are pretty big, so it's pretty easy to press them, and you don't have to search as much as you do on a lot of other cars. I'm in the back seat of the Model S, and I've got decent room back here. There's plenty of room for my feet under this front seat, but it's a little bit tight in the head area. If I tilt my head back just a little bit, it's right into the headliner, and I'm only 5'11". Part of that comes from the fact that the battery box is 4 inches thick and it's right underneath the floor, so the interior cabin is just a little tighter than most of the competition. Otherwise, it's a beautifully finished interior, but there's a couple things missing, like there's no fold-down armrest in the back here, which is something you see on a lot of the competitive cars, and pretty convenient if you only have 2 people in the back seat. But without that center armrest, you do have a seat that's wide enough and comfortable enough for 3 passengers. Now it's time to get rolling and see how the Model S works on the road. The main instrument cluster right in front of me here is just another computer screen. It's one big dial, and on the left is the speedometer, and the right is the power meter that not only shows me how much power I'm applying from the electric motor, but when I take my foot off the gas, it shows me how much regen I'm getting. In a regular car, when you step on the brakes, you just turn the energy of motion of the car, the kinetic energy, into heat, and it's wasted. On an electric car, that kinetic energy is captured and goes right back into the battery, and that's what we call regenerative braking. On the Tesla, the engine power and the regenerative braking are both controlled by the accelerator pedal. So when you completely release the accelerator, you get full regenerative braking. And the beauty of that is that in traffic, once you learn how this works, which doesn't take very long, you can actually drive with your right foot alone. You only move your foot to the brake pedal if you really need to stop hard, or sometimes when you're coming to a complete stop. The Tesla only has a 1-speed gearbox. There is no gear shifting whatsoever, and that's for 2 reasons. Number one, the electric motor makes its maximum torque at 0 RPM, so you don't really need a low gear to get going. And number 2, its red line is 15,000 RPM, so you can go all the way from a dead stop up to the top speed of 134 miles an hour without having to change gears. Now we're driving along on a country road at about 55 miles per hour. It's a very quiet cabin. There's absolutely no motor noise or gear whine that we're hearing, and it's pretty quiet. I would say it could even be a little bit better than it is, but it's very quiet right now. One of the most wonderful things about this car is the immediate response to the accelerator. I step on the gas and we just surge forward instantly. In a regular car, there's always some lag. The engine has to suck in more air. The torque converter has to unlock. The transmission needs to downshift. Maybe the turbos need to spool up. None of that stuff happens on the Model S. Now the car is pretty fast too. It goes 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds, does the quarter mile in 13.3. I step on the accelerator and the car just leaps forward immediately. It's a fantastic feeling, and only an electric car can deliver that sensation. I'm really surprised to be hearing myself say this because I'm a gasoline engine guy, but you spend a little time with a powerful electric motor car and it's pretty convincing. The Tesla Model S's natural competitors are the sexy German luxury sedans. These are cars like the Audi A7, the BMW 650 Grand Coupe, and the Mercedes CLS. They sort of match the sleek lines of the Tesla. They're about the same size, and they've got V8 engines that deliver about the same power. Now this car stacks up pretty closely with those things. It has about the same size interior, maybe a little bit bigger in the front seat, a little smaller in the back seat. It has way more luggage room than any of those cars do, and it's got very similar performance. At the test track, it's a few ticks slower 0 to 16 in the quarter mile than most of those V8s, but it's got that instantaneous response that we love so much. And it's basically priced on top of those cars. The German cars cost from $75,000 to $85,000 base price, and the Tesla Model S Performance version also costs about $85,000, but it doesn't have as much equipment on it. This one behind me is a signature performance model and has a base price of $97,900, and it has a few options that kick it up to almost $103,000. And that's after the $7,500 federal rebate you get with an electric car. So you're going to pay more for this car. And what that comes down to is, for the Tesla Model S to make sense, you still have to want an electric car because you're going to pay an increment for it. But if you do want an electric car, this one has the range to really get around a major metro area for a full day of driving. It still won't work on an interstate because it takes too long to recharge and has too short a range. But for real city use, this car will get the job done. And it's the first electric car I would consider owning. I'm Chubba Chetta with Car and Driver. See you next time.